No, you're not seeing things, ladies and gentlemen. We are definitely about to be hooked when it comes to our guest. And boy, this man is the definition of a rock legend. I can assure you, there is no House of Broken Love here tonight. We'll definitely share plenty of Angel songs. You definitely will not be once bitten, twice shy, because our guest is a part of one of the most influential bands. And certainly when you think of the 1980s, you think about the band Great White and the band that had hit after hit, and truly one of the bands that has stood the test of time, that put out album after album, had song after song, and was a band that certainly defined an era that people like myself still go back to and still enjoy to this day. And the band is still active. They've got a brand new singer for a few years, and they just played not too far from me here in Niagara Falls, Ontario, beautiful Niagara Falls. And they've got a show here coming up in Miami, Oklahoma, and they're going to be playing M3 right after that the following weekend. We'll definitely get into that. We'll also get into the fact that it's almost the 35-year anniversary of the band playing MTV Unplugged. We'll definitely get into that. We'll definitely talk about maybe new music on the horizon and go down memory lane or two and talk about a number of different things. Plus, I have something for our guest and the band. Well, they'll definitely be like, wow, I guess we can't get there from here unless I give them this. But since I know our guest has done so many of these, and I almost guarantee that not even Eddie Trunk could give you an introduction, which I'm about to give, because the reason why I'm hooked into you is because I've had on not one but two WWE wrestlers, and apparently somebody thinks now we should cross over here on Sportswire Radio into the rock world. But since I know my chat's going to want it, and I know my mom's going to be listening to this, and I'll tell you why in a little while she'll be listening to this, I am going to give you an introduction, which certainly, no, I'm going to let Brett keep the job right now in Great White, but I am going to get the show on the road here in style on Sportswire Radio, the number one global radio station where not only all wrestling matters, but all music matters. But in the words of Michael Buffer, let's get ready to rumble, baby. So with that, without further ado, here on the Sports Report, number one global sports show, the founding member of one of the most influential hard rock and heavy metal bands of all time, a band that has not one but two platinum albums, and including the 1989 multi-platinum classic Twice Shy, a band that had a top 5 hit that even the likes of Michael Jackson couldn't top on the Billboard charts of the Hot 100 in the year 1989. His name is simply put Mark Kendall. My friend, how are we doing?
How you doing, Tom? That was a heck of an intro, man. Good
Yeah,
job.
yeah, that's my hook. Literally, that's how we got hooked into you. And some guys, I had Rhino from WWE, and he wanted to run through a wall right afterwards, and he's been in WrestleMania. And I had Doug Pinnick of King's X, who gave me advice for my voice when I get older, compared it to James Hetfield's. And I had Randy Jackson of Zebra, who looked at me with like 10 heads. And Brian, I had Brian Damage Foresight last week, who said, "Wow, that was impressive." But enough
Right
about
on.
that, sir. It is an absolute honor to have you here. And there's a lot going on here in the world of Great White. And I want to talk about, for those that are listening and watching here, in prime time on the brightest lights, the biggest stage, the platform that you and Great White most certainly helped build here at Sportswire Radio. Talk about your most recent gig playing in beautiful Niagara Falls, not too far from here in New York City. Some view you had there.
Yeah, that was that was a pretty cool show, man. It was this big theater, 5,000 seater. We sold it out. The fans really showed up, and it was really eventful. From my hotel room, I could see the falls. It was pretty badass. I even made this little short film. You know what I mean? I'm going, check out my view, man. Um, so, anyways, it was the people treated us really good, and it was pretty badass. And Tom Jones had played the night before we played,
Oh
and
my God! Wow.
I got there a little late, or else I would have went over there to trip on that. Because when we did our first video in L.A. for "Stick It," it was our very first song that we had the cameras out, and Tom Jones was rehearsing, and I was watching him rehearse through this window. He was just in like sweats and you know and singing all these like badass tunes, and I guess he was rehearsing for Johnny Carson. The
Yeah, yeah, of course. A legend.
Tonight
Yeah.
Show or whatever, and
Yeah.
it was for the following night, and so so to hear him all these years later, he's 85 years old, and they say he hasn't lost much with his range. Like he's hitting all the notes, all badass. That would have been cool to go see Tom Jones, man. But yeah, so Canada's always been good for us. We've done a lot of tours over there, and real extensive one with Alice Cooper. I remember we played 40 countries, I think, on that tour.
Wow.
So that was pretty cool. Yeah.
You guys were always an international band because certainly in the early days, you guys were in Europe first. I mean, Michael Wagner produces you all those years ago, and you were
Right.
always a band that had a massive following internationally. So that doesn't surprise me there. And do you feel like the band has kind of gotten almost like a new lease on life the last few years? I mentioned some of the names I had on, and I'll certainly talk about the Kicks connection later on, but I feel like with a lot of these bands that were popular, like in the 80s or certainly even in the 70s, for example, Randy Jackson and Zebra, they started out in the 70s. I kind of feel like that
Yeah.
there's been a second wind and almost demand in seeing a band like yours play. Do you feel like that there's been like a second wind these last few years for the band and their success? With you guys have had?
Absolutely. I think it's because of the songs and the memories that were created through the songs, because we're fans ourselves, so we can kind of relate in that way. Like I have all my heroes, and certain songs remind me of certain times in my life that kind of bring me back to like really cool places in my head and where I was. And like you can just rattle off any song and I could tell you what I was doing. You know what I mean? So like we hear those kind of stories from the fans that they might have a high school memory, maybe it was the first girlfriend or whatever, a certain time. And so yeah, it's just been just loaded with good times and bad times.
I think there's been a lot more good times than bad, and the band I
Oh,
think
absolutely, yeah.
had a well-deserved resurgence, and I always felt musically you guys were so different than many of your contemporaries. If you want to see the band play, they have a bunch of dates here, and you can check them out at officialgreatwhite.com /tour -sign dates. They're going to be here coming up at the Buffalo Run Casino this Saturday. They're going to be playing with Slaughter. They just played Niagara Falls with Slaughter and Vixen. They're going to be at the Capitol Theater, and they're going to be playing here at M3, which was a huge topic last week, and they'll be playing with the likes of Stephen Pearcy and Warren DeMartini, who are back out there, and it's Two Forts of Rad and a bunch of shows there, so you can check it out at officialgreatwhite.com /tour dates. Obviously, you guys are now out here for a few years with Brett, and I know it's been a topic with many of the fans, and I, for one,
Yeah.
being a fan of the band, would love to know what's the update on new music. It's been a while, and I know you guys have talked about it quite a bit. So, is there any
Yeah.
new in the plans?
Yeah, we've made a lot of demos. It shouldn't be too long. I've been saying it for so long, but it's just hard to put it together, man. But literally, I've flown Brett out here multiple times, and we're just going in and presenting the band with ideas. Um, it's also a case of we were we don't know exactly how we're going to do it. With today's world, like
Yeah,
to bombard people with like 13 songs, it almost doesn't make sense because with all the medium stripped away except for downloading, I'd rather you know, get the full attention of maybe one song and a video, you
sure.
know, let them trip on that. And then we'll come with, another one and another one, and maybe then hit them with like 8 songs or whatever. But that way, because the way it's not like when we were teenagers where we knew everybody's name in every band, and we'd sit there and read the liner notes and trip on a album all day long, and you know what I mean, go out and buy
Yeah.
it and take it home. It'd be like a 10-hour project. Now they just download a couple songs from this guy and that guy.
Yeah, everybody goes on Amazon, you go to Spotify, iTunes, and you just download the song, and
Yeah,
that's it.
it's not the human connection that we used to have. So we
Sure.
we have to conform to that. Our thing is we just want to get the music to the people. We want you to
Yeah.
hear it because we want feedback. We want you to say it sucks or it's great, or tell me something, man.
No, I think
You
it's
know?
important, and it's funny that you're not the only band that's taken that approach. I was speaking with Randy Jackson of Zebra last month, and we were talking about that because his band hasn't put out new music in over 20 years, and we were talking about it, and
Oh
he was
yeah,
saying, well, maybe we put out a couple songs, maybe we put a song out and see what the public thinks, and then, last year, Motley Crue only puts out a song. This week, later on, Sammy Hagar is putting out just one song, kind of a tribute to, is sort of a
yeah,
tribute to Eddie Van Halen. So not everybody's doing, okay, let me go out and put 10 songs, 12 songs on a record. So maybe that's the approach that you guys take. Maybe it hits radio or it hits somewhere on YouTube, and that maybe decides, what, maybe we should put out more songs. But it's always that fine line you're trying to figure out. And I do know that fans want to hear music from you, and especially with
yeah,
Brett, because he's doing a
yeah.
fantastic job. And you guys are going to be playing here coming up this week, and also M3. And we're here with the legendary Mark Kendall, of course, the founding member and the guitarist of Great White. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice figuratively and literally where all wrestling matters and all music matters. I like to ask you this, sir, because I've been very fortunate that the reason I'm here speaking to you is the unconventional route. I've made my teeth in the world of wrestling. We've had on 2 WWE wrestlers. I've had on several other very high caliber professional wrestlers, and that's what got me here to you. But I always like to ask people like yourself who've had so much success, obviously platinum album, gold records, 2 big hit singles that charted, one hit number 5, the other one number 30. But do you have advice for anybody up and coming, whether it's musicians, whether it's wrestlers, athletes, entertainers? Do you have any advice for anybody that's up and coming?
Um, yeah, what I tell up and coming kids. I've worked with a few bands and just kind of being like the fix it man. It's like, give me your toaster. I think I know what I'm doing. For some reason, when I'm looking from the outside in at someone else's music, I just go, oh, just do this, this, and this. It's when it's my own music, then it's a little more difficult to be objective. But yeah, I just tell them, just believe in yourself, work really hard, practice a lot, get out there and try to play more than everybody. Look at all your heroes and try to find out what they did. I go back and look at a lot of documentaries because I'm like, it is it just as tough on some other bands like that it was on us, like getting dropped off our first label and having to go back and borrow money and all that. Does
Yeah.
everybody have to go through that? And the funny part is, every documentary I've seen, their story is more difficult than ours.
Yeah.
I've seen Grand Funk, Tom Petty, Chicago, just a trip on their story. to see,
Sure.
because they're just like us. I mean, you grow up, you got mom and dad, brother, you know, okay,
Yeah.
what happened? You know,
Well, I
and,
get a lot of
and,
wrestlers
yeah,
on here, and what it takes to be a professional wrestler, it's like
yeah,
the amount of sacrifices that they go through just because we get so many of them that come on here and it's a lot and everybody goes through something. I definitely agree with that. I mean, even for me to get to this far, I mean, I remember starting out all, 6, 7 years ago, my mother was like, please stop already, stop doing this. And, here I am now. And, people are like, oh, I knew you were gonna, go and talk to people like yourself. So yeah, I think that's a good way to look at things. Everybody goes through a struggle, but you just got to keep going out there. I did want to ask you
yeah.
because the 35th year anniversary of coming up is you guys playing MTV Unplugged, and that was such a generational thing. And what is your memories of that, the 35-year anniversary of MTV Unplugged, the band playing? Now that that's here in a few days, what's your memories of that?
I think what I remember is it was the embryo of the show when we heard about it, and I think they might have had maybe a couple of people do a show, and then we went on the day we did it. We did it with Don Henley and Damn
Wow.
Yankees with his, uh,
Ted
you know,
Nugent, Jack
and Ted,
wound up
Ted
producing
Nugent.
their album years later. Yep, what a small world.
Yeah, Ted Nugent was in the band then, so it was. And we know Jack Blades real good.
Yep.
So we all recorded the same day, but they released it a week apart. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
that I remember that, and also another thing that sticks out is my manager called me the night before we went there and said, "Hey Kendall, I need you to learn 'Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You' by Led Zeppelin." He said Jack wants you to do it, and I go, "Are you serious?" I go, "The arrangement's all insane, and there's all this picking and stuff." I go, "Are we going to rehearse?" And he goes, "Yeah, we'll go over it in the dressing room." And so we played it once in the dressing room through, and
Mhm.
and then we did a sound check and played it once, and and so I was a little nervous. If you ever watch the video, you can see him kind of shaking, and
Yeah, I've seen it
I,
before.
I, my thinking was, let's get this horrible thing over with, right? And and Jack, he knew the song so well because he's a big Zeppelin fan, right? So I was kind of cueing off him. It's like I started to go into parts when I wasn't supposed to, and just kind of noodled my way out of it to make it sound like I meant to do that. And so at the very end, I kind of pulled my head up, and I'm all happy because I know I made it through. And
Mhm.
end up playing that song like in rotation. That was, and but it turned out great. I mean, so that sticks out. And also, when I heard about it, I go, "This is a great idea. We can give people a different look with
Sure.
acoustic guitars of the songs that they're used to hearing, but they're going to hear it in a different way." So that was a lot of fun, to strip it down. They say if a song's good, you should be able to play it one man and one guitar, and it should still be good. It,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
could see that.
you
Yeah, as a
shouldn't
as a
need to
bass
have
player.
icing and fog and lights to make it good.
No,
You know
but
what
you
I
know what?
mean?
It led to a generational movement because almost everybody, like you said, every band played on Unplugged. It was almost like you had to be on Unplugged, and you guys were like at the forefront of that. And it's 35
Yeah,
years coming up. I mean, that's just why I was like, I had to ask you that just because of what it meant, and it
yeah.
certainly meant a lot to the band's success and everything else. I was always wondering this because I never hear anybody ask you this question, but if you had one or two moments in your career that stood out most, what would they be?
Um, well, one that was kind of big because my dad was always like a really big part of my life. I played sports until I was 18. I played baseball, and he kind of wanted me to be a pro baseball player. Even though I was a guitar player, I'd been playing since I was 9, and jamming with these guys and those guys, and kind of in bands and stuff. But when I told him I'm going full time music, he was fully supportive, but didn't think there's a great chance to make it in that you know,
Sure.
uh, being in a band and being the next Led Zeppelin or whatever. So, but he also, I just told him, Dad, I really have zero chance in baseball. So, and I love music. So I just want to go full time at this. And he was fully supportive, totally dug it. He was a jazz trumpet player, so he'd been
And your
in
mom,
bands.
right, was also a musician as well.
Mom,
If I
my mom was a singer, but not a pro in the sense she didn't have albums out or anything. But she
Yeah.
used to sing with my dad's bands in intermissions. She
Oh
would
wow.
sing old jazz standards like with the piano player. Sit on the near the piano and kind of just sing on their intermission. So
Sure.
she had a beautiful voice. I recorded her. Months before she passed away, we went up and did a demo. But anyways, so one of the great moments for me was just to share. When we started selling millions of records, and we played the Forum, which is in Los Angeles,
Yeah, the LA Forum, of course. That was where the
the
Lakers
LA
played.
Forum. We
Yeah,
played the
definitely.
Forum, and my dad and mom and people I went to school with, like seventh grade and stuff, the whole 10 rows, I just like know everybody, and we're getting platinum records from the record company on stage and stuff. That kind of sticks out. Just to share that, not like dig me, I'm bitching, like look at my shiny new trophy. It wasn't like that. It was I would just it was more of a case of just happy to share it with my dad, mainly. Like, I'm not on the LA Dodgers, but trip on this. I did
Yeah, I'll
something,
take the double
that
platinum
worked out.
album. I'll take the double platinum album over being the
Yeah,
20th
yeah,
man on the
yeah.
Dodgers roster. I don't think he complained much about that. But
No,
speaking of
no,
awards, and
not at
speaking of
all.
things, we were talking about this off the air, and I noticed that the band hasn't been awarded something. So I decided to take the bull by the horns here. I could have said maybe the shark by the horns, but I don't know if that quite would have made the right metaphor.
Take the
But
shark by the fin.
yeah, I obviously should have done a different metaphor, but I'm going to do something a little different because I've noticed that you guys haven't been given this, and I have a little thing here that I'm pretty well known for, at least in the wrestling world and some other places. So I am going to do this here because I'm going to share my screen right now. And congratulations to Great White because you guys are officially in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. You've now
No
been
way.
inducted into my Hall of Fame. Yep, I'll give the physical copy to Melissa, who set the opportunity up. Thank you, Melissa, for your support of my platform. And yeah, I wanted to give you guys this because, I think you should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but I'm not going to go ask you anything on that farce of a thing there in Ohio. But at the very least, you'll be in a Hall of Fame alongside the greats like Kix and Zebra and my buddy Savio Vega, who was responsible for the career of Stone Cold Steve Austin and some others. So, congratulations there. And I also didn't want to stop there because it's Mark Kendall Day on all Sports Bar radio platforms because
No way.
yeah, yeah,
That's
we want
cool,
to do
man.
things a little different because you do all these all the time, and I never hear the presenter or the host give you something or give the band something. So I'm like, you know what? Let's do something a little different here, and obviously those are some of the things that you'll get off the air. And if you want to follow Mr. Kendall, check him out on Instagram, Facebook, officialgreatwhite.com for information on tour dates upcoming. They're going to be playing in Niagara Falls last weekend. This weekend, they're going to be playing in Oklahoma. M3 is coming up. So a lot of other dates. They're going to be playing with bands like Slaughter, Warren D. Martini, and Stephen Piercy of Rad. There's a whole bunch of other bands. Check them out on their website. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice figuratively, literally, when now all music matters on Sportswire Radio. Like, share, and subscribe to us here. We're here for a few more minutes with Mr. Kendall, who's a very, very busy man, but we're honored to have him on. I have to mention my mother because she actually has covered Rock Me and Once Bitten, Twice Shy. So I had to
Oh
let
man.
you know that, yeah, she sings, and she was like, you got to mention it. I'm like, I will. She's a singer here. She's got a band here locally. I'm in New York City, Heartless, and
Oh.
yeah, so she has played a few of your songs. I know she wanted to play the Angel song and Save Your Love and
Oh
Stick
man,
some of
that's
the other
great.
ones. Wanted to make me mention that, and I just did. But I was wondering, speaking about Once Bitten, Twice Shy, there's kind of an interesting story to that. Do you want to talk about that for the audience?
yeah. It was kind of didn't really happen by design on our part. What happened was our record was done, and our manager brought the song to us and said, "I'd really like you guys to cover this song and put your own spin on it or whatever." Because I he managed Guns N' Roses and the not Slash, but the other guitar player Izzy.
Izzy Stradlin, yeah.
This is the way I heard this story: is he brought it to Alan, and Alan loved the lyrics. Our manager loved the lyrics because it was about being on the road, this and that, and we thought the song was fine. We were done recording, so we recorded that song, and so it really. But the ironic thing is, we had run-ins with Ian Hunter, but it had nothing to do with doing that song. In 1984, we toured with Judas Priest. Our first show was in Niagara Falls, New York, and um, he lived somewhere near there. Our sound man was friends with Ian Hunter, and we needed a drum riser, and he had one in his backyard, and he wasn't doing nothing. So we went by and picked up his drum riser. So that was our first encounter with Ian Hunter. And then another time he rode on our tour bus again. And I knew nothing about a solo career. I never heard Once Bitten, Twice Shy in my life. I knew him from Mott the Hoople. I knew I
Yeah,
loved
yeah,
him. He's totally awesome. But I didn't know. And I've said this before, but I really mean it. If we were out and needed to do a cover song, we would find a hit, which that wasn't a hit. It was just, I guess the only known kind of in the UK.
yeah. It was like number
And
14 or something like that in the UK charts, but here in America, the song didn't really break.
it didn't break. So, so we would find a big hit, kind of like Lenny Kravitz did American Woman, find a
Yeah.
monster song and just kind of make it our own in some kind of way. But we wouldn't go out and find a song that was never a big hit and do it. So it was mainly to do with the lyrics. Our manager loving the lyrics, and we accepted it. We said, "Yeah, this song's fine." But the record company picked that song for the single. There's always a moment when you do a record where the record company comes down to the studio when you're done, and they stand in the control room and listen. And you kind of look at their facial expressions and what they're doing. And when that song played, everybody flipped out and go, "That's it! Oh, that's it! That's it!" And so that ended up being a single, and they were right. It really got legs, and
Yeah, number
you
five,
know,
and the only two of the only artists that had a higher
yeah,
song on the charts than you guys was Prince and Bobby Brown. I mean, think about that
yeah.
summer. I mean, Prince had Bat Dance, Bobby Brown had On Our Own from Ghostbusters. Those were
It
two of the
it
singles that
chart
were
it
only ahead of it. It was
it
crazy.
charted higher than Rock Me because Rock Me just went to nine.
Yeah.
Nine was the peak for Rock Me. That was a top 10, but that went to five. That was like up there with
That was a big deal then to be number
you
5.
know.
You guys were ahead of Michael Jackson even at that time, I think. I mean, that's crazy to think of the
Uh,
contemporaries that you guys were right there with. I mean, Prince and
well, he was
Bat had
probably
Bat
number
Dance.
one, and kind of maybe it was up there for a bunch of weeks.
Well, don't
Yeah.
well, we'll not tell anybody that, but I mean, still an
Okay.
amazing accomplishment. And the album
Yeah, yeah.
right in the
It
top
was
10.
it was something else. It
Amazing.
was funny because MTV, we had the number one video, but I was telling this other journalist, it's not because the video is the greatest ever. It's just when you have a big song like that that's on the radio everywhere and on MTV and on the charts in the top 10 like that, number 5 or whatever, that they just say you're number one. It has to do it. It's more political than because
Yeah.
the video is great. It was a cool video though. We had a lot of girls in it, and
Yep.
there was a lot of candid things going on
Wasn't
with our
Bobby Brown in the
boss.
video also? Wasn't Bobby
Yeah,
Brown in
early days of Bobby Brown, and just kind of a fun video.
Yeah, it was just, to be that high in the charts and to be right there with those, pop icons. And if you want to find out more information on the band, you can go to greatwhite.com. Official.com is where you can see tour dates, merchandise, anything you want on the band, please check it out. We've got about another 15 more minutes with the legendary Mark Kendall, of course, the guitarist of Great White, the influential Great White. That is certainly a band that has left its mark in the hard rock and the heavy metal world. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice, figuratively, literally, when all music matters here on Sportswire Radio. And, I did want to ask you, it's funny about M3 coming up because I had on Brian Damage Forsythe of Kicks last week, and we were talking about Alan Niven, and you mentioned him, and Alan Niven
Yeah.
was responsible for Kicks's only true "Close Your Eyes," and that was their big song at the time. It hits number 11 on the charts, and
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like what was Alan Niven? Why was he so responsible for band success? I mean, I talked a lot about it with Damage Foresight, and I heard Guns N' Roses. He was responsible for Appetite for
Oh yeah.
Destruction. Guys, what
Big.
what what did he bring to the band's success?
He's just for one thing, he's brilliant. His mind is brilliant, and he's a good businessman. He knows how to speak with people, and when he believes in something, he just goes to the wall for it. He will not accept defeat, and so when Geffen wanted to end the first Guns N' Roses album at 250,000, he was not going to accept that. He goes, I'm taking Slash to the radio. We got to put Jungle back to the radio. We got to do this. We got to do that. And look what happened. They sold 30 million records.
Well, it's the
You know
same
what I mean?
story that Damage talked about with Niven last week on here, because the record that Kicks had, Blow My Fuse, was almost like it was done. It was a done. They had a couple
Yeah.
singles. The record kind of was around 400,000 or 500,000 copies. And he, even though he didn't manage the band, but he was actually, if I'm not mistaken, they were on tour with you guys around that time. It was you and
Right.
Tesla and some of those bands. And Niven went to Atlantic Records, even though, again, he wasn't managing the band, but he said, I think you need to play this single, Don't Close Your Eyes. And that
Yeah.
record took off again, gave it another leg, and got them to 1 million records. I mean, so it just
Yeah.
shows you the foresight
He's
that he had, you guys, Guns and Kicks, just, crazy.
he's a visionary, and he gets really close to the music, and when he, like I said, when he believes in it, he won't accept defeat, and a lot of the way, because record companies are giving you a huge loan, so they think more in dollars and cents. That it's hard for them to separate themselves and
Yeah.
and if they say, I don't know, I just don't hear this song going. If Niven believes it, he'll talk them into giving it more more attention.
Well, he
Um,
certainly did that. I mean, there's just, no
yeah.
question that.
And you know what else he's the master at? Because the first demo I heard of Guns N' Roses was just it was just horrible quality. It's like, how could you listen to that and go, I'm going to make these guys huge? I have no clue. So he has that skill as well, which is a
Sure.
skill I don't have. You know.
Neither do I, obviously. I'm going to stick to wrestling, but
Let
I'll
me
let
tell you
Alan.
something. With Guns N' Roses, his business partner that they had a company together said that there's 1,000 bands. Speaking about Guns N' Roses, there's 1,000 garage bands that are better than this. When Niven heard that, he got rid of the guy. He goes, no way, man. No way, dude.
Yeah,
You're missing
I
it.
think
You're
Guns N'
missing
Roses
it, bro.
did okay. Yeah, I think Guns N' Roses okay with Appetite for Destruction. Speaking of bands, I never hear anybody ask you this before. I let you go here in a few minutes. Is there ever a band that you wish that you would have toured with? I know you've toured with so many bands, either as a headliner, an opener, these packages that they put together now over the past decade and a half. But was there, or is there, a band that you would like to tour with still?
Yeah, I would love to. I'd always love to tour. We played a show with these guys, but I would always love to tour with ZZ Top.
Oh man,
Just
yeah, that would
just so
be.
I could pick Billy Gibbons' brain, because I like I was close enough to him to where my wife became friends with his wife, and and got to sit with him in his dressing room and speak to him for a while. And he's invited me to a show. But as far as just like playing licks back and forth, talking shit, whatever. I've never got that opportunity, but I always loved the man. That we were at this record store in Reno. I mean, music store in Reno, and the guy told me he was in the vault down in this basement checking out pedals for 4 hours. Just,
Wow.
like looking for some new sound or something. Yeah, I mean, things like that. I did. It just, I just love to hear that he has so much passion that he would,
He's a musician, ZZ
be
Top
hunting
was a
for something.
musician's band. They were,
Yeah.
I could see that kinda. I could definitely see I could see that, and I could see that in your playing. You're such a feel player. You're such a blues
Yeah.
feel player. I didn't see you as some of the other players that were in your heyday and such, and I could definitely see, some of those things as to why that they come to mind. And yeah, Great White's in the Hall of Fame. It's Mark Kendall Day here on Sportswire Radio, and you know,
Thanks for that. That's pretty
yeah,
cool, man.
I'll give you the physical copies off the air. But I noticed also the band recently last year had some songs in a movie. It was a Jay Moore movie, and I thought that was interesting. You guys had a couple of songs in a movie that came out. How did that come about? I thought that was kind of interesting. That it was a
What
movie.
what movie is it?
It was Holy Cash, I believe. It was with Jay
Oh,
Moore,
yeah.
Alberto
Oh,
Rodriguez, Carrie
the way
Stevens.
that
Yeah.
yeah, the way that happened was a friend of mine, Mel Garcia, who works at KLOS, which is actually the radio station that helped us get our second opportunity
Oh
with
wow.
Face the Day. They made Face the Day the number 2 song of the year. It was the most requested, apart from some other song. But anyways, because of that song, Capitol Records came and saw us and signed us at the show. So that was
Wow.
really neat. But we've been friends ever since. I've been on radio shows, just goofing around down there before. And when this movie came out, because he supports comedians like Paul Rodriguez and a lot of the
Jay Moore was in the movie. Yeah.
Latino comedians. He has a big salute, and we went down to the show, and part of him coming on stage as the MC, he was playing Rock Me, and he played this song called Big Time, and he's thinking Big Time would be perfect in this movie, which is our very last album recorded
Yep.
7 years ago.
Yeah.
So, like you're talking about bands, it's been a while. But anyways, so they put it in that movie, and we went down to the premiere, and I met Paul backstage at his show at the Improv. Very down to earth dude. His son was a pro skater. He was
Oh
like
wow.
like a Hawk,
Tony Hawk.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
badass. And now he owns sports stores or something like that. So he does that now. But
Yeah.
Paul Rodriguez is one down to earth dude, and it was. I mean the movie was funny as hell. I mean the way it started out, these guys are in prison and they were having cockroach races and stuff. They all have money on it. Yeah. But anyways, it was kind of a cool movie. But yeah, so that's how that happened. Just a friend,
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that the
knowing
band,
somebody.
got a couple of songs in there, and one of those songs you're referring to was from the last album, Full Circle, and
Yeah.
obviously, if you want to check it out, you can go to certainly Mr. Kendall's Instagram page, and you can see more about it. Also, go to officialgreatwhite.com for more information. The band will be playing this coming weekend in Oklahoma, Miami, Oklahoma. They'll also be at M3. M3 is just always such a big festival. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I talked a lot about it with Mr. Forsythe last week at Kicks, and that was Kicks' last show. The Great White's got plenty of life left, and a lot of great bands are going to be playing there. But I wanted to ask you two more questions. And what has Brett provided to the band that I think a lot of fans have been excited for and hearing the live shows? What has Brett
Yeah.
provided to the band
Um,
here?
well, a lot of times, when you're kind of forced into getting a new singer, um, if they don't sing the songs correctly, it's kind of hard for the fans to deal with. You know what I mean? They want to hear the songs how they remember them, and that's one thing he's added to the band. He has a full range with his vocal, and he can sing the songs um, how people are used to hearing them, and he brings a lot of energy to the stage, and he doesn't take himself too serious. You know, he goes out and just totally kills it on stage, but he's not overwhelmed. He's grateful to be in this position, but he's not like, you know, like, oh my God, it's great, Wyatt, you know, or anything like that.
Yeah,
You
you're
know what
not
I mean?
supposed to do that, really. You're not, like I
So
said, you're not
he's
supposed to.
really, he's kind of an old soul in a way too, because he's a lot younger than us, but he's just one of the boys, you know, and yeah, we're just digging the guy, you know, we haven't found any. You know how there's always something wrong, man. You know, and so far he's just all about the brotherhood and going and doing good shows. You know, so
Well, you guys are
pretty cool.
definitely playing a lot of great shows, and I kind of feel like the band has had a second life here of late. And if you want to watch some of these live performances, check them out here. The band just played with Slaughter and Vixen here, not too far from here in New York City, in beautiful Niagara Falls, Ontario. They're going to be here coming up at the Buffalo Run
Yeah,
Casino with Slaughter. That'll be this Saturday. They'll be in the Flint, Michigan's Capitol Theater, M3, which again, M3 speaks for itself. We spoke a lot about that with Kicks, and we have, again, places California, Wisconsin, just a lot of great places all through the summer. Queensryche is out there. Go there playing with them. And so many places. You want to buy tickets, follow the band. You can do that at officialgreatwhite.com. Go to tour dates, and you can see that here. And obviously, Mr. Kendall has been very generous with his time, and we really appreciate that. And thank you to everybody here for tuning in. I know you're a busy man, so I'm going to pass the baton to you, give you some closing thoughts, and anything else
yeah.
that you want to say here before I let you
Well,
let you.
yeah, I noticed you mentioned Kicks a few times, and those are brothers of ours. They
Yeah,
were
Steve
out with
spoke
us
about you
when we
guys on the
took.
pod. Steve's got a podcast that he spoke about you guys, and he was like, "Well, I
Yeah,
think those guys will continue, but we're not going to continue and such." He said it on his podcast. He calls it. Let's leave it at that.
yeah, but talking about history, the first time I saw them or was around them was on the Scorpions tour. They came out and opened the show, and I dug them right away. And
They're like you guys. They had the blues influenced.
uh,
They had just I just feel like that you and them kind of got unfairly lumped in with some of these bands that I
yeah,
listen to Kicks, I listen to Great White, and I don't hear, glam rock or hair metal, whatever they want
no,
to call it.
no.
I never got that. Your intros always had a feel to them musically. The bass was always in there. Like, listen, I come from a musical household. My mother sings, my father played the drums, so I would always listen to things, and with an ear. And you guys were more musically intricate than a lot of your contemporaries. Very similar to Kicks. Kicks to me was always like
Yeah,
AC based. You guys were more Zeppelin influenced in a way. So I always thought
yeah.
that
I,
you
I
guys.
told I told journalists before that my hair never wrote a song.
It's true though. I mean, like, I think, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
listen, everybody. What difference does it make? To me, it's about the music, and I kind of think like Kicks and Great White are examples of bands. Tesla, another band that you toured with. To me, I never looked at and said, okay, they should be painted with a broad brush with some of the bands that you've toured with, because I always felt musically, you guys were so much
because
different.
our music stems from our influences, you know,
Yeah.
not our hair or what we wear. So if that was the case, the '60s, it would be, you know, bell bottoms and beads music.
Jimi
You know,
Hendrix had a fro. Does that mean that we think about Jimi Hendrix and how about his fro? Do we think about,
yeah, right.
the Beatles had
They're
pop?
mixing fashion with and glom, you know, kind of making a magnet to the music, like it's all one thing.
Yeah, and
To
I
where
just feel like with like hair metal or metal, I feel like it gets so unfairly scrutinized compared to the other genres. Listen, new metal in the 2000s, when I was growing up, everybody had spiky hair. We don't talk about the spiky hair. The grunge era, that it was in the 90s. They don't talk about, oh, well, they had the flannel. I mean, but it seems like all they talk about this, well, everybody had Aquanet, everybody had hair, long hair, or
yeah,
they had
yeah,
leather jackets. But if you look at the music sonically, I think that the 80s stands the test of time. It was the best era of music. I mean, I didn't live in that era, but for me, sonically, I think that's where everything, you saw just so many different
yeah.
things. And to this day, I think that's why it's kind of come back a bit, and that people want to go hear bands like yours. Or Kix's last show, 15,000 people they play in front of. I think people want to hear something because you guys stood the test of time, because the music is what stood the test of time more than anything else.
I think it's an easy escape for a journalist just to come up with a catchphrase like
You didn't
hair
even listen
band
to
or
the
what.
music either. It's a
Instead,
joke.
they're not listening to band to band and going into their deep cuts and then making a judgment. They're just, you know, the decade was this, the
No,
end.
decade of decadence and everybody. No, but they didn't go and listen to what you guys were doing, what you guys did as a band, and just what I think you did to influence so many musicians and so many up and comers. I don't hear anybody today, not to go down the Gene Simmons rock is dead route, but I mean, like, I don't see anybody of today's era influencing players the way you guys did, and and all of your contemporaries. I don't hear that. I know, because people talk to me, and I'm in the wrestling world, right? So wrestling is very big
Right.
with, right? So you got to have that. And I speak
Yeah,
with,
it's coming
again,
back. Yeah.
hundreds upon hundreds of wrestlers that come onto my platform. They're the reason I'm speaking with you, with all respect. I want to give a shout out to all my wrestlers that have backed me, all the companies, all the pro guys. And they talk to me all the time about how important it is to have that right song. And they always talk about the 80s. They always talk about
Yeah.
the metal. They always talk about the hard rock. And to me, I think wrestling and what guys like you and Kicks, it's so similar, because there was an attitude. There was just, you go out there, and you guys
Yeah.
meant so much, and I just see so many
Absolutely.
similarities, and I just thank you for everything you've done.
Thanks, Tom. It's not all journalists though. Like Eddie Trunk, he's more. He always kind of separated us a little
Eddie
bit.
was
So,
different. Lon Friend of
you know,
KNAC.
they're
Eddie was,
more connected to music. You know,
yeah.
they didn't just go, oh, there's great. Wow, another hair brand. You know,
No, I know
Eddie,
that.
he always gave us a fair shake. So it's not all journalists.
But
It's
yeah,
that.
but no, there's no question that I think certain ones you're referring to. But listen, I know you're a very busy man, so I want to give you the floor. I want to give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you like to plug, share, or say? And I want to thank Melissa, by the way, for the
Yeah.
opportunity. Thank her for our support of my platform. And anything else, sir, you'd like to say? The floor is yours.
Um, yeah, just thanks to our fans. It's amazing. No matter where we go, they seem to be in front of the stage singing the song. So we're really grateful for that. Grateful for the fans. We've always given our fans, full attention. We don't leave anywhere till everything is signed and all the pictures are taken. And so thank you to all the fans that have grown up with us. And we're real appreciative of that. And thank you, Tom, for the award. And
Yeah, let's give you some more
I'm
awards.
really digging it, man.
Yeah, the
That
band
took
hasn't
some
gotten
effort,
awards.
and that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah,
And I'd love to hear your mom sing, man. Sounds cool.
Yeah, she'll definitely get a kick of this. And I'll say the last thing before I let you go. I remember as a kid, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and I, for whatever reason, remember the album Hooked. For whatever reason, it was one day, we lived on, in Brooklyn, and we had my dad and my mom listened to music, CDs, and I know I'm dating you a bit, but I mean, I remember looking at this album Hooked. And I was like, I looked at the cover, and I looked at the lead track, and I was like, that band was something. They were like interesting. And then, I would hear you guys all the time on Hair Nation, and obviously, hearing your stuff on Eddie. Eddie,
Yeah.
was big. He used to be on WNEW. Now he's on Sirius on Hair Nation, and so it was
Mhm.
kind of like, in a way, I have to thank, obviously, my parents for whatever reason buying the album Hook. They bought the album Hook,
That's
and
awesome, man.
it was hooked. So there you go. But
Yeah.
that is Mark Kendall. He's going to certainly give us the hook. So we're going to make sure that we let him go. And Great White is going to be touring here coming up. That'll be this coming Saturday. Go to their official greatwhite.com website for more information. And he is also a day here awarded to him. And it's also Great White's moment to be in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. My friend, thank you so much for all you've done, for everything you've done for music and all the memories. And can't wait to see you guys out there. And I'm sure I'll speak with you soon.
Thanks,
All right.
Tom. I really enjoyed you, man. Thank you very much.
That was
Okay.
Mr. Mark Kendall, of course, founding member of the legendary band Great White. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice figuratively and literally where all music matters. And like, share, and subscribe to this video. Thank you to Melissa for giving us this opportunity, and we'll talk with you soon. And until then, have a great night and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, where you are on the number one global radio station that is Sports by Radio.